Hello and welcome to episode 52 of the Virtual Velo Podcast with me, Emma Martin, and my co-host, Chris Schwenker. Today, we continue our build-up to the Cycling Esports World Championships, Chris.
Yeah, we do, and I think that the audience can probably hear that there's a bit of a commotion in the background. That's because you are recording from hotel lobby in Zurich. So from one live event world championship to another, tell us how it's going.
Well, you can never have too many world championships in one year, particularly if they're cycling related, if you can ask me. Well, I am indeed here, Chris, in Zurich in I'm going to give it its official title, the 2024 UCI Road and Para Cycling World Championships. And it's really exciting actually in Zurich because it's the first ever integrated world championships from para cycling and road the World Championships together, and it has been creating some phenomenal racing, and every single race here in Zurich finishes at the same finish line.
It's pretty cool, and I know that you are obviously adding the words to the action, as your co-host likes to say. So how is that going? I know from what I understand, it's 9 days of broadcasting.
Yeah, we have just completed day 6 of the 9-day World Championships here, and we started with it was the mixed handbike team relay that kicked the championships off on Saturday. And I tell you something, you'll have watched relays in many, many different sports, whether that's swimming, athletics on the track. Normally they close a big championships. This one opened the championships, and it really opened in style, because I have never, ever seen in a relay competition the lead of a race change so much. It was absolutely nail-biting stuff. And I'm not giving any spoilers away for anybody who hasn't watched any of the footage from the World Championships here in Zurich. And I'm going to call Tuesday this week Super Tuesday, because I called 20 world champions over the line on Tuesday in the para cycling time trial competition. It was absolutely phenomenal. A long, long day for the racers, a long, long day in the commentary box. But who can say they've called 20 world champions over the line in one day?
We can say that you will also be calling the Cycling Esports World Champion, and our guest is hoping that she'll be the name that you call. So why don't we get her in?
Well, I think we should, because our guest today, well, I'm going to give you some clues. She was the British National Hill Climb Champion in 2016. She's competed in every edition of the Esports World Championships. Olympic Esports Series in Singapore, yep, she went to that too. She finished on the podium of the Zwift Games last year. There is nothing this woman cannot do in cycling esports. And, she just absolutely dominated the semi-finals of the World Championship qualification race this year as well. Welcome, Lou Bates.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're both big fans, and we're really happy that you took the time. We're obviously going to speak a lot about this year's World Championships. I apologize if I'm going to be opening up some old wounds here, but I want to take you back to last year's championships, the 2023 event on Zwift. Many people, including myself, thought that it could be your worlds to win after you made it to the top 10 in that final race, but then you didn't leave the pen. What happened?
Well, I did actually leave the pen very briefly for about 20 seconds, I think. So at the end of the climb race, I noticed that my heart rate was no longer displaying on the screen, which obviously induced a bit of, I had spare heart rate monitor there ready. And changed that and realized that still wasn't showing, and then looked down at my Wahoo, noticed that heart rate was showing on the Wahoo, and yeah, it turns out at that time I didn't really know what was going on. All I knew was that my heart rate was no longer showing in game. So I was frantically kind of messaging over Discord the British team and seeing if they could contact the race, I guess the commissaire, equivalent on Zwift, to see if I was still able to start, because I still had a heart rate trace, or I would have been able to still provide that in my dual recording or whatever. And at that time I was told that I could start the final round on the Glasgow crit circuit, so I did start. But then I had the pop-up message that basically said, you violated the terms and conditions of this event, like bye-bye. And then my screen kind of just went kind of blank, I guess, just because I was kicked out of the game. And yeah, I mean, I infringed the rules of not having heart rate data in game for that final event. And what it turned out was that the only thing I had in my setup that was not direct connected, because I direct connect everything in terms of my turbo and pretty much everything else, was my heart rate detector, because it's not possible actually to direct connect that right now. So most of us have an ANT dongle or a Bluetooth dongle. And it turns out that after many years of being very reliable, my ANT plus dongle had decided that that was the moment that it was going to die. So it was actually the dongle, not my heart rate monitor or anything else. But we only had, I think, 5 minutes between that climb event and the start of the crit event, and in that time period, there wasn't enough time really for me to work that out. So, and I don't think we had a spare dongle anyway, because I hadn't thought of that possibility. So yeah, it was a very odd ending to a world, in that normally when I end a race, I'm like bent over my bike, like unable to speak, pretty much not able to walk. And whereas I was just ending, I was like, that's it. So I think I got off my bike and had a lot of wine afterwards, because I was just kind of like, that this is just so weird to end an event like that. I wasn't even, I don't know, it was very odd. I expected to be much more upset, and but I just felt kind of a bit like empty about it. It was really weird.
It must have been a really strange sort of mix of emotions, Lou.
Oh, really, a lot. And I had trained so hard for that crit circuit. I had been around that crit circuit about a million times. I mean, I think those who may have watched the Zwift Grand Prix round that we had in November last year, we had a round of the Grand Prix that was on that circuit, and I just had so much unfinished business that I just went round there like a lunatic. I think it was like a points race, and I just had to like smash it. And I think it was just like I didn't necessarily have to prove to anybody else what I could do around that circuit, but it was just like an opportunity for myself to go and do what I knew that I could do, on that course. So yeah, it was, I actually feel like I'm a bit cursed when it comes to Worlds, to be quite honest, because the year before, when the Worlds was in New York, that was a absolutely amazing course for me. It finished up a 3-minute climb, and Emma, you know that when I won National Hill Climb, it was up a 3-minute climb. And that year I actually got sick the day before the race and was not able to start, and that I honestly, I could not get out of bed. I was like that sick. So yeah, I feel like I have a lot of unfinished business when it comes to the Worlds. I feel like I've had a lot of bad luck when it comes to the Worlds. So for me, this year, I really just want to get there healthy and have no issues, if you know what I mean, and just be able to race. Really, that would be a perfect situation.
Well, you certainly looked like you were on a mission during those semifinals. Is that what was going through your mind? Was it you have a score to settle, that you need to get back there, you need to redeem yourself, you need to settle that score?
Not necessarily on the semi-final day. I think the semi-final, I mean, we all wanted to just make sure that we got there. And also, I think the semi-final also gave us a great opportunity to do those courses under race conditions before the day, because often there aren't huge numbers of races on Whoosh to kind of get yourself kind of race prepared. So it was a good opportunity to kind of line up and do those courses kind of in a race simulation. And for me, when I do race, I may not race as often as many people, but when I do race, I like to race. The semi-finals, yes, I did really well, but I don't necessarily think that you can take a lot from the results there, because a lot of the other girls, once they knew they were safe, I don't know necessarily that everyone was putting in their full effort. Some people had other races on the same weekend. I know like Kristen had a hill climb, Merle had her duathlon champs and all that kind of stuff. So I think all the qualifiers showed was that the women's race, well, and the men's race, of course, is going to be so tight. And the standard is like crazy high, and it's just going to be super hard. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really exciting race. And a good one, Emma, for you to commentate on. I think it's going to provide you with a lot of action.
Oh, Lou, I am looking forward to it. I'm the biggest fangirl in the world, and the 20 qualifiers in the women's and the 20 qualifiers in the men's. It is going to be phenomenal, both of those races. And the fact that there are 3 mini races to pull that together, it just makes it even more exciting. So Lou, would you say at this point in your career then you pretty much are a cycling esports racer very specifically?
Yeah, well, I keep trying to retire from racing completely, to be quite honest with you, but I never quite managed to succeed, or something keeps like pulling me back into various forms of racing. So when I retired from rowing back when I was like my late 20s, I didn't envisage doing any other racing, and then I got drawn into triathlon. After triathlon, I got drawn into cycling, and then when I finally thought I was definitely going to retire for good after the National Hill Climb in 2016, like there was no way in my head that I was going to do any racing ever again. I kind of sneakily got drawn into esports, and now seem to have ended up racing again. So yeah, esports is definitely the only racing that I am doing right now. So yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll try and retire again. But yeah, something always seems to draw me back.
When you're a competitor, you're a competitor. There's nothing you can do about that. And there are a lot of people that are very happy that you haven't retired. They have you one of the favorites for this race. And one of them was Matt Smithson, the race director at My Wish.
I don't know Matt all that well. I mean, I do know him obviously because he heads up all the Whoosh stuff, and kudos to him and the Whoosh team for what they've done with the Worlds this year. The courses are amazing, the format is amazing, and all the work that they've put into that, you really can see in the game. I think in the women's field there are, I'm not sure I'd say 20, but all the women that are lining up for that final, there are so many strong women now. I mean, Emma, you see that from Sunday Race Club every week. We see that at Zwift Games. I think what I've noticed since I started esports I think I started in 2020, just the depth of the women's field has just grown significantly. Like back when I started, there were maybe 3, 4, 5 girls who would be winning stuff. Now there's 10, 20 women who, dependent on the format, could come out and medal or win. So I think it's a really exciting time. And I think actually, for esports in general, the fact that, most of the time the men and the women race the same distances, get the same prize money or prizes, I think is fantastic. And I think, that is a big draw. I think for women to come into esports, because things are even, and I think there's kind of equal kudos given to women's races and men's races, and I think that is a really cool thing.
And is that a real draw for you, Lou? Because you haven't done a lot of racing on the My Wish Sunday Race Club, but when you do drop in, everybody knows you're there.
Yeah, so I think different approaches work for different people. One thing that I learned last year doing the Zwift Grand Prix and then the Zwift Games. The Zwift Games was announced very late, so I think we were already into the Zwift Grand Prix season at the time that the Zwift Games was announced. So I had planned my season to end in January, which was when the last Zwift Grand Prix race was supposed to be. And then when the Zwift Games was announced in March, I had to reassess and try and hold my kind of race form, I guess, for another couple of months. And I found that really hard. I was pretty burnt out, to be honest, by the time we got to the Zwift Games. And I think, for me, I am older, I'm 43 years old. I do not recover as well. I would love to recover as well as I did when I was 23, but the reality is very different. And so for me, I race more sparingly because when I race really hard and it takes me a long time to recover from those efforts. So for some of those girls racing all the way through the summer and racing all the way up to Worlds, every Sunday at Sunday Race Club, that works really well for them. For me, I know that I would probably be burnt out by now if I'd have done that through the summer. So for me, having a really good break after the Zwift Games, doing some outside stuff, just getting like mentally and physically like refreshed, and ready for this like super intense time period that we're having like towards the Worlds, that worked better for me. But like I say, everyone works, in different ways. Everyone has different powers of recovery and things like that. So yeah, you're right, Emma. I don't race that much, but when I do race, I race hard.
Well, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because, holding your form and maintaining that and racing week in, week out, sometimes I think esports as a discipline draws you in to racing more than you might if you were, say, out on the road or on the mountain bike or racing an outdoor discipline, because it is so convenient.
I absolutely agree. I think it's really easy to you can race every day, really, across all the platforms. I mean, it's amazing, and again, for some people that works really well. Some people aren't great at pushing themselves in training, and therefore, if they go into a race situation, they're more likely to get into that kind of high intensity that they need. That's never been an issue for me. Quite probably the opposite, in terms of I'm pretty good at going hard in training. So that is a fine approach for me to keep training, and rather than racing all the time. Yeah, like I say, I think it's very, very individual. Also for me, Sunday Race Club doesn't actually work that well in my week, because I'm I guess a normal person with a job in the week. For me, like, I need to do my longer rides and things like that on a weekend, and I do love my Saturday group ride with like, I go out with a group of guys, and it can be quite smashy, and I generally get home from those rides feeling like I'm a wreck. So the chances of me racing well after that on a Sunday morning are pretty minimal. But again, it comes back to, why am I still on the bike? Why do we do all of this kind of stuff? For me, like, this is enjoyment, this is for fun, so I don't want to miss those rides. So if that means sacrificing racing Sunday Race Club all the way over the summer, I don't mind that, because I'm doing what I enjoy, and for me it is a hobby and not a job. So yeah, it's different approaches for different people, depending on what they're doing outside of the platform, how their week is, and all that kind of stuff. Some people can do their long rides midweek, but I'm not one of them.
Well, and some people are now, professional cycling esports racers, and it is their main job. And it's interesting, isn't it, that dynamic and that balance? And Lou, I think you highlight that really well. Let's talk about the actual format of the World Championships coming up at the end of October the 26th, to be precise. Obviously, the semi-final was 2 of the 3 courses. They're also bringing in that first round as well, which is the sprint. The opportunity over 15 minutes to set your fastest sprint time adds to the 2 courses that were in that semi-finals. Do you think those 3 courses suit your riding style, or do you think bringing that sprint in is going to maybe rock the boat a little bit that we saw in the semi-finals?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, I am not a natural sprinter. I have tried, and and my sprint has improved significantly since I first started doing esports, but that has been through a lot of work. And as you guys know, some people are just naturally more sprinty than others. And that is not necessarily my thing. However, this format, because of the 3 rounds and because of the distribution of points, means that I think you can kind of get away with not being amazing on one round. I mean, that sprint round is 20 points, or 20 down to 1 or whatever. I probably haven't, I certainly haven't got the best sprint, but I probably also don't have the worst. And, race day and all that kind of stuff, I could see me not necessarily being at the pointy end after that first round, but there's a long way to go. And, even those sprint efforts will add to the fatigue that builds up over those 3 rounds. So again, the effort that you put in round 1 will still cost you in round 3. So I think it's a really interesting format, because there's definitely an element of trying to save a bit of energy, or making sure that you still have some energy on that third race, for sure.
Tactics really coming into play from what you're saying, Lou, and a lot of strategic decision making to be done.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one tactics wise. I mean, it's very difficult to time your sprints so that you take points off other people. Like a sprint is a sprint, it's a flat out effort for everyone. The margins are so tiny. You aren't going to have teams that are going to be able to necessarily put 5 people between people on purpose, that because the margins are going to be tiny. But having said that, Team Sweden have huge numbers of riders there. They have got some cracking sprinters. The Swedes are always super strong in the sprint. You can see them getting a lot of points. You've got some absolute watt monsters like Jackie, who will just be like laying it down. Some monster watts in that section. Yeah, I think it's gonna be really cool. I think the main thing with these formats is they're really fun formats to race. They're just action from the go. There's no like dead pedaling time, if you know what I mean. Like, the first round of the semi-final, you're into that climb like immediately. There's no kind of just sitting around like watching people. And for you guys like doing the commentary, that's really cool because there's just going to be action like from the start.
I really feel that these courses in this format is really going to pull out the best all-arounder. That was the purpose from the start. But you weren't always the best all-around rider that we know of now, right? You came to road racing from triathlon from rowing. I have this picture of my mind of you towards the end of the races with the headband in the drops and just the power just like punching through the screen. How did you identify that you have that potential to put up those really strong 1 to 3 minute powers, and then how did you unlock that potential to then be successful in the hill climb circuit, and then it just translates just beautifully to cycling esports?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting one. So a lot of people think that I'm naturally a punchy rider because of some of my later hill climb results and because of what they see on esports. But that hasn't always been the case. So when I came back into cycling from triathlon, I'd been doing Ironman. So I was used to doing all these long efforts and I was not punchy at all. So Emma will know there's a very famous hill climb in the UK called Monsell Hill Climb. It's a very, very short effort. So for the women, it's an under 2 minute hill climb. And the first year that I did it, I don't think I was top 5. I might not have even been top 10. I was like, just did not have that kind of effort in me at all. And I always feel like my progression at Monsell actually shows my progression as a rider, because I think I went from doing like a 2:15 down to a 2 minute, down to a 1:50, and then down to a 1:42 over 4 years, which is like over that shorter distance of a hill climb is an incredible progression, and went from being probably outside the top 10 to winning it twice, getting the course record and all that kind of stuff. And really it was that, and doing those short hill climbs and actually being rubbish at them that made me think, oh my gosh, because the UK hill climb, those hills are not like anything. They're not like the Alps. They're not like the climbs in the US that are 40, 50 an hour long. These are short, sharp efforts. And when I came back from triathlon, I'd lost the ability to go that hard. Like when I was a rower, I could go that hard, but doing triathlon and doing Ironman, you're in that like zone of endurance, and you almost forget how to push yourself that hard. So a lot of my training after that first hill climb season, when I was useless, was actually just learning how to push that hard again, and just how to kind of unlock that kind of pain tolerance that it takes to do well at those kind of hill climbs. So I utilized some of my like old rowing training to kind of build that back up. But just a lot of learning how to hurt really again, I think.
Those hill climbs, Lou, Bank Road, Ryber, Monsell, Chris, they are all in the Peak District within around a 10-mile radius of each other. And they are, as Lou has said, pretty much between, well, for a normal human, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. For Lou Bates, sub 3 minutes and sub 2 minutes on Monsell is a phenomenal climb and effort. There is a fabulous cafe at the top, and it's normally the only reason I get to the top on the bike. So Lou is just absolutely, really, really well known for her really short, deep digging efforts on those climbs. And Lou, it's lovely to hear the story, because as a fan of hill climbing in the UK, and the Monsall Hill Climb always comes up at the beginning of October. It is indeed being advertised. It's open for entries at the moment, should anybody want to try the Monsall Hill Climb this year.
Amazing hill climb.
It is and packed all the way up, in terms of people riding out and doing their Sunday club runs out to the Monsall Hill Climb, watching the race, and then the club run comes home. People, I think, see you as a hill climb specialist in the UK, and they know you took that national title. But what they don't hear is that story that you've just given us about how you just worked and worked and worked and got better and better and better incrementally. And thank you so much for sharing that with us, because I think that really does, people need to hear that, the champions take time to develop and work as well.
Absolutely.
I know that you did perform esports live in Singapore for the Olympic Esports Series, and this is going to be a live event final in Abu Dhabi. First of all, I want to get your thoughts on how you're going to feel. It's a different country, it's a different place. You got to travel there. You're not going to have your routines and the support. How do you feel about that? And how do you feel about competing on the live event stage for the Rainbow Bands?
Well, I think I was super lucky to get the opportunity to compete in Singapore. I'd never done a live event before, and I have to say the experience was probably one of the best things I've ever done in my life. You guys have had Barney on. He was my teammate in Team Fuego. That was amazing. It was actually a really cool format for all of us to be put in teams with each other, because a lot of us have raced each other for years and years and years and never met. I think when we all saw the stage that we were going to be on, I think everyone was a bit like, whew, this is quite scary. But for me, I loved every single second of that, and that's why I'm so looking forward to doing an in-person event in Abu Dhabi, because the energy that we got from each other, from the crowd, probably more from each other, to be quite honest, because it was almost like a celebration of esports and of us like being together, and just being able to race in person, being next to each other. I think there's also that element of we all do all our verification, but when you're in person, everyone's being weighed on the same scale, everyone is doing their height measurement, everyone is racing at the same time of day. It was just amazing. Like, I absolutely loved it. So I'm kind of hoping for a similar experience in Abu Dhabi, in that yes, there are challenges when you're competing outside of your own environment. It's nice to just be able to go down into my garage and race and have everything like familiar. But I think you have to go in with knowing that things aren't potentially going to be perfect, but that I guess I just see it as such an amazing opportunity for all of us to meet each other, to have that atmosphere, and just to really showcase what esports can actually be like.
Lou, I know Chris probably wants to take the show out with some more conversation about the World Champs, because let's just go there because we can. But before we do, there is also the Zwift World Series and the Zwift Games running already again this season. What are your plans for that? Are you planning to dabble there as well over the course of the winter?
Yeah, I am. So again, I mentioned like last year's schedule and how I ended up, getting to the Zwift Games in a bit of a but so my plan is not to do that this time. And actually, the way that the season works, my plan is to almost have a split season. So to have like season one up until actually the November round of the Zwift World Series, and then I'm actually going to Australia for 3 weeks to visit my sister and my extended family over there. At the end of November into December. So that will give me kind of an enforced kind of end of first season break, in that although I'll be taking my bike, really seeing my nieces and nephew and my sister and family are really going to be priority through that time. And to be honest, after the lead into the Worlds and everything, I will need that break, both physically and mentally. So I'll probably come back from there not that. So yeah, in January, whatever round of the Zwift World Series in is, maybe I'll be at the back, but I'm kind of hoping that will mean by the time we get to Zwift Games in March, I'll have had that kind of second build into that, and hopefully, actually be in good shape and still, physically and mentally fresh for when that comes round in March.
On the podium in the first Zwift World Series race, just so we know that when she says that she races, she goes hard. She goes hard in every race, that's for sure. Now, you wouldn't be going to Abu Dhabi unless you were planning on racing hard, and you wouldn't be going there unless you were planning on winning. Now, have you envisioned what it would be like to actually pull those rainbow bands over your head and get that iconic jersey? Does that mean something to you? How do you think you'll feel if you are the fortunate one to get that honor?
So I haven't really thought about a result, to be quite. I think because of what's happened to me in the previous worlds, which we've covered, my main goal and my kind of, I guess, all I really want is to be able to go to the Worlds and do a performance that I am pleased with and be able to give everything I've got. And if that means 20th place, or if that means 5th place or whatever, that's all I've got. And so I'll be happy. If I can finish race 3, over my bike, not able to breathe, and knowing that I've emptied the tank and I've done everything, that is, I've been very lucky in my sporting career that I've had some wins, and I know that the next day the same Lou Bates is going to wake up, world champion or not. It's not going to change who I am, but that comes through 20, 30 years of racing now. So for me, of course, we would all love a good result, but I just want to be able to put out the performance that I know I can. And like I say, that might mean a 20th, that might mean higher than that. I don't know. I'm just going to be happy if I can do that.
So Lou, World Champs in October, Zwift World Series and the Zwift Games over the winter into March. What about the Olympics, the Esports Olympics? Possibly something you might dabble with?
Well, it depends when it comes on the calendar, Emma, because I'm not getting any younger. I need them to bring it in earlier, because I don't know how much longer this body is gonna be prepared to take the punishment that it's being given.
You've only got to wait till 2025, Lou.
Oh, I might just about be able to hang on till then. I mean, it would be phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. It would be absolutely amazing. But yeah, for me, like I say, I'm not getting any younger, so I just need to take year by year. But yeah, I mean, if I could get there, it would be fantastic for sure.
Well, I have to say, all I can see is, you mentioned really at the beginning of the show, the growth and the strength and depth of female racing on Cycling Esports and how it's just got better and better and better. I think racing across the board on Cycling Esports is getting better and better and better. People are focusing, people are training specifically, and there are some phenomenal performances coming out, and the strength and depth across the races is superb, and really, creating a massive fan base and a swell of people really watching the discipline and really interested in hearing what people like you, Lou, have got to say, and the World Championships and potentially those Esports Olympics next year. It's such an exciting future. With an exciting future, I'm going to leave it there because, Lou, it has been absolutely fabulous talking to you today. Chris and I have been looking forward to it, and thank you ever so much for fitting us into your busy schedule, because it's been brilliant to hear from you. We have guests coming up on the run in to those World Championships in Abu Dhabi on the 26th. Martin Holmgaard from the Danish Cycling Federation is with us at the beginning of October. Jason Osborne is joining us as well on the run-in. And of course, Chris and I are going to be on the ground in Abu Dhabi at those World Championships. And I'm sure we'll find something to talk about there, Chris.
I hope so. And thanks again, Lou. It was really great having you. We appreciate the insight. It was incredible. And we wish you luck. We really do.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. Well, that leaves me to say thank you to our guest, Lou Bates. If you have enjoyed today's podcast, you can like, follow and subscribe to the podcast on all your social media platforms and your favourite podcast providers. You can follow me at Biking Emma. You can indeed to subscribe to the newsletter on the Zoommunicate and keep up to date with all that cycling esports news. We are going to be back in around 2 weeks with Chris, it's going to be episode 53 of the Virtual Velo Podcast. Until then, stay safe, enjoy your riding. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.